Hi guys, before you jump into the playlist that I've made to help you go about how to read RC passages in the GMAT, GRE or CAT, I thought I'll give you a brief explanation of how to go about reading or how to use these videos. It's almost like a one ring to rule them all kind of menu here. I won't take a lot of time, but I guess some of the things that you have to keep track of when you are going through these videos. Starts with why did I make those videos? Because a lot of people who appear, test takers who appear for GMAT, GRE, or CAT, they do not have access. A lot of students do not have access to good teaching. Number one. Number two, even if they do have access to good teachers, sometimes it's difficult for us to understand how to imbibe or inculcate those good habits. Yes, good teachers help you by telling you what to look for, what not to look for, and then when you go to the class or you take some coaching or try to follow tips on YouTube or wherever that is. You do see that some of these teachers are doing a good job at telling you what to do, what not to do, how to go about things, how to read, and all of those will help you with a lot of tips. Will help you look at things that you would have not thought about otherwise. Fair enough. But at the end of the day, when you come back home and you try to do the same things, try to solve an RC passage on your own, you make similar mistakes probably, and you'd wonder where you're going wrong. I mean, there are students who keep asking me as to how to internalize those good habits, because you could be doing a lot of RC passages, but the accuracy might not be improving, or you could be repeating the same mistakes. This is my effort to. I mean, I can't really assure you that this is going to solve the problem. This is my effort to help you a little bit more. So what I would be doing is I'm just cutting out the question part for now. I'm just reading out passages one by one in the subsequent videos for you. Take a few paragraphs and explain, or trying to show you how I would go about it, how I would go about reading a passage, because I'm a big believer of the fact that when you read well, you understand well, obviously, and when you understand well, you would not be too worried about the questions, GMAT, GRE, CAT, whatever be the format of the questions or whatever be the purpose of the questions. At the end of the day, if you comprehend the idea being discussed, you should be able to address the questions no matter how twisted they might be. So this is my small effort to try and help add on to all that you are learning over and above whatever you're learning. So these are the things that you need to. I just made a quick list of things that you could be aware of. Number one, what to read fast, what to read slow. So let's say you're reading a passage of 500, 550 words, right? You do not read it at the same pace all through, for the simple reason that the passage varies in density, varies in the importance of ideas. Every sentence has its own value, yes, but sentences are also, by their very nature, different from each other, right? Even in a normal conversation, the beginning of the conversation, for example, you speak to a friend, you say, "Hi, how are you?" Speak a little bit about the weather or whatnot, but then suddenly this guy who has pinged you out of nowhere after 6 months or 1 year comes to the point and says, "Hey, I need your favor," isn't it? But doesn't say, "I need your favor" straight away. Most people don't do it. It would have been easier for us, but they don't. See, right? That's so conversations, or anything, any written content in books. After all, what you're reading is just a conversation, but written in more formal English. So the nature of the content provided to you varies sentence by sentence. In fact, not even sometimes sentences could be complex and compounded. At a phrase level or a clause level too, the nature could vary. So you need to know where to be fast, where to be slow, and the reading speed is an important aspect of your GMAT or GRE CAT RC preparation, because you could go as fast as 300, 350 words per minute sometimes. Some guys might go even faster, and you could sometimes you might need to slow down to probably 175, 150 words per minute too. Again, it's important to have a good range, because if your maximum is say around 175 words per minute, or 180, and it's a dense passage, then you end up slowing drastically, and that would not give you much time to attempt enough questions. So you need to know where to go fast, where to reach slow. Again, I'm not spoon feeding this to you across those videos. I don't want to make false promises, and I don't want you to come looking for a magic pill. I would be pointing out from time to time in the passages which I'm discussing as to which part could have been read faster, which part could have been read slower. What was the logic? Some sentences discuss ideas, or some paragraphs discuss ideas, some paragraphs discuss elaboration, some paragraphs discuss facts and statistics. Okay, so different paragraphs or different sentences have different purpose. Depending on the purpose, you go fast or slow. So that's one thing you need to keep noting down, isn't it? As and when we discuss those steps, it will help you if you keep track of, okay, what part did I read fast? What part did I say you should read slow? Number two, critical reasoning while reading. Critical reasoning is extremely important in day-to-day life. Yes, uh, you could be from any profession, but without critical reasoning, the world would be a disaster, isn't it? Reasoning matters, logic matters, rationality matters. What you could infer, what you could imply from conversations, right? So, simple examples. See, we don't have to um, make it all sound so funky and complicated. Critical reasoning is everywhere, right? For example, uh, if you are wearing a Batman logo on your T-shirt, let's say, right? So I cannot be absolutely sure that you hate Marvel and you're a DC lover. But at the same time, I could probably infer that there's a chance, right? So that's critical reasoning. So and then let's say I am a diehard DC fan, and I see that you're wearing a Batman logo on your T-shirt. I would probably just say hi and tell you that I am a DC fan, and there's a good chance I won't get punched in my stomach. Chance of that happening probably higher if a DC fan goes and gets into an argument with a Marvel fan. I mean, this social media, right? Anyway, what I'm trying to make is we make inferences in our daily life, we make assumptions in our daily life sometimes, and most human beings, pretty much all of us, have the innate ability based on the society, based on our conditioning, to spot inferences and implications and assumptions. It's just that when we come to reading a passage, comprehension passage in a subject that we do not obviously indulge in our day-to-day conversations, then suddenly our critical reasoning gets dormant a little bit. Doesn't mean that you don't have the critical reasoning skill. You do. That's why you're able to manage conversations with friends. That's why we understand our best friends so well. That's why we understand the tone of our parents so well. We know we our behavior depends so much on our ability to understand the people close to us. So it's not that we don't have critical reasoning. We do have it. We just don't know how to apply it on it. In a reading comprehension passage when you're reading a subject or a content that I'm not quite familiar with. So we'll try to do that. I'll try to explain where you could have inferred what kind of stuff, what kind of assumptions have been made by authors. Again, you have to painstakingly sit through those videos and make your notes, because unless you are doing the reading along with me, you would not be able to pick much out of there. Because if you all you want is definitions and what is an inference and what is an assumption, you can just Google, and there are tons and tons of stuff written already. You should be doing that as well, but this is how to use some of those principles in while you're reading. Number three, anticipating questions even as we read. Something a lot of test takers do not do, right? They tend to go about a reading comprehension passage in two parts. They just read something and then they look at the question and come back, search for the answer, or they try to answer from memory. If you try to answer from memory, sometimes you end up being wrong. You try to come and search, you waste time looking for the information. The information may not be easy to find, which is why good readers, when I'm cognizant that there will be questions asked at the end of the day on the passage that I'm reading that I'm reading about, we anticipate questions. What kind of questions could come? We know the milestones, and they're not hard to spot. Okay, I'm not saying they're select magical blue. When you read a lot, you'll understand. You'll be able to do the same thing. It's no rocket science. Uh, it's important to anticipate questions. You read something that stands out, and the author has given an example, let's say a specific example to explain a theory. You know that this is the part that might excite a question setter. A literary device has been used somewhere, or an argument has been made based on certain yeah, a series of facts, and then what we can conclude. The author gives you that. So that's a place where the test setter can use to give you a question. So you need to be cognizant of what I call the inflection points in the passage, when the tone changes, when there are contrasting things happening, so that when the question eventually pops up, right, and you know that you did make a mental note out of it, searching becomes easier. And always important to double check your information, not to answer from memory, because sometimes the options are too close and they can play games with your memory, right? So that's one thing you would be cognizant about when we are reading the passages. Number four, literary devices. Every now and then I will point out to you, okay, that hey, this is a metaphor, and this is a simile, and there's an analogy here, there's an anecdote here. Um, Lots and lots of different literary devices are used by authors, uh, but the most common ones are obviously metaphors and similes, especially. And then once in a while, you will also see what is called an analogy, a story, a different event or an example taken to explain the situation at hand. That would be there. I'm clubbing all of that under literary device, but these are all different features, basically tricks used by writers to explain to you what they want to explain to you. Okay, so it's important to identify those special devices. Some of them are literally called literary devices, and some of them are not literary devices, but they're tricks used by the author. Basically, anything where the author deviates from the content. To give you an example that's not related directly to the subject to help you understand better. And in most cases, these examples, you do not take the literal meaning of the words that the author uses, but rather ask why did the author deviate to give me this example. These kind of situations are very important for you, especially for RC passages in GMAT, GRE, and CAT, very specifically these three. And I mean, yeah, anywhere where you encounter RC passages, this is important, but predominantly GMAT, GRE, and CAT is at least at the back of my head when I'm trying to help out a few guys. Fifth one, how to break longer sentences. What do you mean by how to break longer sentences? So a sentence could vary from 10, as simple as 7, 8 words to 30, 40 words. Sometimes an entire paragraph could be one sentence. And then authors could be using commas and semicolons and colons and dashes and double dashes and whatnot. So you need to know where to pause and where to process, because the last thing you want is to read 25 out of 35 words of a sentence and then realize you don't remember the first 10 words. Or even worse, you read the entire sentence and realize you don't remember anything. Instead, it will help you if you understand that, okay, this is the point where I can stop and process the previous information, then move forward. So basically, good readers do not worry about the length of the sentence. You should never worry about the length of the sentence. It's the length of the idea that matters to you, the length of the clause or a phrase, the small sub idea within a sentence that matters to you. And this is where I mean, some of us Indian students especially have trouble. I don't know if I know the root cause of it, but I'm guessing part of it is because of the way grammar is taught to us in schools, and we a lot of focus is put on sentences per se, and therefore we always think sentence is the basic unit, right? But more like clause is the basic unit. One subject and one verb is the basic unit. Sub ideas, there could be several sub ideas inside one sentence. So our old habits have to probably give way to better reading habits. So I do not want to worry about where the period is. I want to worry about where I can break a sub idea, process it. So 7 to 8 words, okay, the idea is done, process it, then move on to the next, and then see what is the relationship between these sub ideas. So even within a sentence, I could have 3, 4 sub ideas. Okay, for example, I could say, I love watching Marvel movies and I love reading DC comics. If I say this, there are 2 ideas, but the comma and the and in between tells you the relationship between these 2 sub ideas. I don't want to breeze past till I find the full stop or the period. It's easier for me to read the first part, process it, read the second part, process it, and use the punctuation or the conjunction. Conjunction is basically the connection between ideas. Grammatically, conjunction is the term, and or but these are the words that you would have learned about. These are connections or connections that help me understand the way two sub ideas interact with each other or influence with each other. Depending on your understanding of the conjunction, you can you know anticipate what's coming, right? For example, let's say if the sentence itself is starting with although it's raining, right? Now although it is raining, and then if I say although it is raining, he's sitting at home, kind of goes against your conventional norm, and this is where good readers don't take their prejudices. Now generally if I say although it's raining, people would anticipate saying okay, he'll go out, because in rain most people don't tend to go out. Now the author wants to explain or establish the character of this person who goes out in the rain. Every time it rains, he likes going out for a walk. So the moment the author says although it's raining, comma, he's at home, the author is passing on that information to you, because although by its very nature connects to contrasting pieces of information. So it's raining, he's at home. These two generally don't happen together, right? That's the information that's subtly given to you. So that's what the author is implying without telling me directly, and that's where conjunctions help. So grammar at the end of the day is what makes reading easier, reading simpler, and helps you extract more information from what you read. So I wanted to observe those things, make notes wherever possible, as to what a comma would mean, what an Oxford comma would mean, what double dash would mean, or what a semicolon would mean. Same with sentence structures and how to navigate different types of sentence structures, right? How to navigate a complex sentence, or how to navigate a compound sentence, or or a simple sentence. Then idea spacing across paragraphs, right? So in a passage will have probably 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 or even 7 paragraphs. The GMAT passages are a little shorter, but on an average, let's say we are thinking about 300 to 500 50 word passages, give or take a few. I mean, there's no fixed number, right? Uh, it's important as a reader for you to understand how the author is using each para or each idea to build a much bigger idea. It's like, you brick by brick you build a wall by wall you build the room, and room by room you build the house. It's the same logic. So as a reader, it's important for me to see how all the sentences are put together to give me a paragraph, how the paragraphs are put together to give me the main idea. So I could be reading something in the fourth paragraph where an unsaid part has probably been implied in the first paragraph. And if I did not apply my critical reading skills in the first paragraph and pick up that information, I may not be able to understand the fourth paragraph. For example, in the fourth paragraph, I could be talking in an essay about how Indian cricket is wonderful. In the fourth paragraph, I could be talking about how the exit of MS Dhoni could be a great loss or an irreplaceable loss, and you could be wondering, hey, where did this come from? But if somewhere in the first paragraph I put the information that he is India's greatest wicket keeping captain batsman, let's say, then you understand where I'm coming from. So in the fourth paragraph, you wouldn't suddenly hit a roadblock block the moment I say it's a great loss. And that's what I mean when I say you have to understand the interaction of all these paragraphs. So the idea spacing across paragraph is very important. So, and see, for example, not everything in the fourth paragraph would be coming from the third paragraph. And sometimes you could be misleading yourself, probably by saying, okay, I didn't understand third paragraph, but let me just move on to the fourth paragraph and see what happens. Probably I'll be able to understand fourth paragraph, explaining third paragraph. Sometimes it happens in the simpler passages, but not always. The more complicated passages, you will see some idea being developed in the first paragraph, some idea being developed in the second paragraph. Part of the second paragraph could be coming from the first paragraph or not. Then there could be a third paragraph developing a third idea, and all these three are put together in the fourth paragraph. So my understanding of the fourth paragraph or the central argument will depend on my understanding of the first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. Plus memory plays a role here because obviously when I'm in the fourth paragraph, it's harder to remember para 1 than it is to remember para 3. So again, the standpoint, the reason I spoke about memory is because it's not just that if someone has a really good memory versus someone doesn't have a good memory, and the reading changes drastically. When I say memory, what I mean to say is how you summarize. So if I summarize para 1 properly, it doesn't matter how many paragraphs I'm reading after that, I remember that this idea has been covered, because at the end of the day, good readers have a mental picture. Think of it like a painting, right? You may not remember every detail of the painting when you look at a painting in a museum, but you can tell the rough contours, and if you are someone into painting, then you would be able to have general information about what kind of painting it is, what is the medium used, what are the kind of colors that are used, what is the tone, what mindset the author has used, which style of painting, Renaissance painting, is it cubism. All these things you could pretty much pick up, if you just spend a couple of minutes on the painting. It's the same logic. We don't remember the details in the passage, but at the end of the day, you should have a mental picture. Okay, the author built this block first, and then he spoke about this, and then she spoke about this, and then finally I'm here. 60 to 70% comprehension should do. And then when you have the question, you can always go back and search, right? Finally, summarizing of ideas, right? So how do you summarize? When you read a paragraph, the average paragraph would vary between 40, 50 words to maybe sometimes 80, 90 words. Depends on the writing habits of the writer, right? Some writers love small paragraphs because they do worry about their audiences, and some writers don't give two hoots about their authors. They're like, okay, I want to talk about what I want to talk about. It's up to you whether you understand it or not. So this write long sentences and long paragraphs. But hey, I mean, each writer has his or her own style, and we can't really question them. The fact that you're reading them means that they have done something good, right? So what we could do instead is we could summarize the bigger ideas as often as possible. So this is a list of things that you should be cognizant of to help you make the most of this playlist that I'm putting up of us reading passages and trying to understand. Hope you benefit from it. Thank you very much.